Hey folks, welcome to the Fruitful Life podcast, where I hope to discuss the business of creativity and dive into the stories behind the creators. My name is Ashwin Chako, and I'm an author, illustrator, and motivational speaker, and I will be your host for this podcast.
You gotta give me a warm-up question.
Yeah. What's your name?
I can answer that one.
Yeah, just tell us who you are and what you do.
So, my name is Enemaku, and I am a Nigerian-Irish multidisciplinary designer and illustrator.
What inspired your creative journey?
What inspired my creative journey is probably a few things. So I'm inspired by lots of different designers and illustrators, Leandro Assis, Hattie Stewart, but I think actually if I look way back and what started me actually creating things, was actually when I was a kid. So there was this anime called Cardcaptor Sakura, and it was like the only show on kids television where the characters actually changed their outfits. So I literally would draw the outfit every single day, and it just got me starting drawing regularly. It was really crazy. And when I look back now, I always think if I'd never watched that cartoon or that anime, I never would have probably been as invested in drawing and art and things as I am today. And I have a couple of the art books from the show, and I've noticed that the artists who created the show in their own mangas, they have a couple of similar techniques that I have subconsciously taken on by accident. I look it up, I have these little dots. They kind of look like little bubbles, and I don't do them in all my work, but in a couple of them. And I looked over the art book the other day, and I was like, oh my god, I've been doing this for the last 3 years, and I never knew where it came from, or I never even thought it was a thing that came from anywhere. But obviously, it was subconscious influence from when I was young.
Yeah, interesting. So, I mean, obviously, because you come from a mixed background, especially around Asian and African parents, I know there is this stigma around the arts.
I know it is going.
So, did you face any difficulty in your journey to get to once you decided, hey, I want to do something creative, or what was your dream and passion, and then was there some sort of pushback from your folks?
So I actually pushed back from both my mother and my father. So my father was Nigerian, my mother is Irish, and my father was like, why don't you want to be a nurse? Why don't you want to be a doctor? And I was like, well, first of all, I didn't have the points. I'm not going to get those points. But second of all, it just wasn't something that I was passionate about. And I knew that I wanted to do something to do with art. And he was a little bit against it. But at the end of the day, I was just this is what I'm doing. And it'll be fine. I'll make it work. It's fine. And my mother, she had actually done graphic design in college. And it didn't work out as a career for her. So she wasn't so much pushback, but she was very, very concerned. She was like, I don't want you ending up investing all this time into this degree and then not being able to make anything out of it. So she was cautiously worried, I would say, as such pushback. But my father, no.
And so, what was the career path you had decided on? I mean, when you were a kid, what was your dream to be? Was it, I don't know.
Oh my gosh. So I had a multitude of identity crises creatively when I was I try and look back through the years, and I basically switched constantly throughout the years between art, fashion. I didn't know what illustration was, but making pictures. And I wanted to create comics for a little while actually as a kid, obviously inspired by manga and anime, no doubt. But I flip-flopped between art and fashion a lot, and those two things flip-flopped all the way up until college. And I basically wanted to go on NCAD to do the core art degree. I don't know if they still do that process, but when I was in college, you would essentially do a core art, and you would get to dabble in a little bit of everything in NCAD. I did not get into NCAD, so that did not happen. So I was just oh my god, I need to pick a discipline within the art, and I don't know what to do at all. I really, really want to do fashion. Even talking back to card captures, I used to always draw the outfits, and that was like what I was really passionate about. But then I was like, the reality of actually getting a job in fashion, and this would have been in like 2010, I think I finished secondary school, so I would have been figuring out college around then. And like Instagram and like social media wasn't as prolific as it was now. So like there wasn't this whole like, oh, I'll just start a fashion label and I'll get up loads of hype online, or I'll figure out press. Like that was just like not a thing. Like you interned at a fashion company if you were lucky for them to even talk to you. And then like maybe you get a job in fashion afterwards. So like the landscape is very, very different then. And I came from a working class background, so like I was like, there was no safety net here. Like if you don't make this work, like you're not going to end up getting a job, full stop. Because I was on a SUSI grant, so essentially the only way I got full maintenance through college, so the only way I could finish my degree was if I went from like, I had to go through all of the things. So like if I dropped out or I didn't pass the course, like that was it. Like it was just like over. So I was like, let's stick to something that is a little bit more reliable. And I looked at the options, and I was really intrigued by graphic design. I didn't quite understand what it was when I started, but graphic design is the path I chose. And I'm really happy that I did, because I feel like I have so many I feel like it's really, really versatile. Like I can do illustration. Like I've kind of pivoted a lot into illustration now. My current freelance jobs that I do now are mostly like illustration and branding, which is like two almost like polar opposite disciplines, but like I can do both of those because I kind of like learned so many versatile skills through them.
So then what does your process sort of look like once an email comes in, or what does that look like for you? Your creative process.
Do you want the creative process or like the boring, like full business process?
Your creative process.
Okay, great. Because the business process can be long.
Yeah.
So my creative process, usually I'll have a look at the brief, chat to the client, etc., see what they're looking for. Depending on the type of project, sometimes I will double check with the client that what they're asking for is actually what they need, because sometimes it may not be. So we'll have a little chat about the brief, how we can tweak things a little bit, and then I go off and research. So a little bit of conceptual research. I was making lists, and like I don't know what the word tree is. It's like a word tree or a brainstorm thing, but basically I just write loads of words that like spark off other words to see if I can like find like an interesting combination or interesting avenue to go down. Assuming I have the time. Some projects are like super, super short timelines, so you have to have a bit of a truncated process, and then the ones where I can really like sink my teeth in, I love to do a little bit of conceptual thinking as well. And then I'll take that and do a little bit of visual research as well. So the ideas that those have sparked conceptually, go and look at visual examples and not necessarily styles. Sometimes it's aesthetic, sometimes it's concept, sometimes it's looking at a similar project another person has done and seeing like where I can make connections there. But I'll do that, make a mood board. Love making a mood board. I love dragging from like, I know people always want to Pinterest, and I love Pinterest, but there is another resource that I love that is kind of similar to Pinterest, called Arena, ARE.NA. So definitely look it up because it's one of my favorite places. And then like a few of my books here, which actually I have very few design books here. It's a lot of like illustration and like comics and like personal just things that I love. But I see if I can kind of like bring a little touch to that in as well. But once the mood board is done, present to client, see how they feel, present the idea and the mood board to the client to get their feedback. And then I will do a sketch. So even whether it's a logo or an illustration, I always do a sketch or three, depending. So I'll present 1 to 3 sketches depending on the job, but I will, before that I'll do like 1,000,001 thumbnails, because I do these like, you ever see not other artists, but some artists have like beautiful like lovely sketches, and like I just have like these janky like like 3 centimeter thumbnails, and I have like 50 of them, because I'm just sort of like working out like composition and the idea, and like I don't want to get too emotionally attached to any of them just yet, because I want to see if see what other ones pan out, and then I come back to them and I'll kind of like expand a couple that I feel are really working, and then I'll present them to the client. And essentially once I get sign off on sketch and color scheme, I literally just do the whole thing. that once I feel like I feel like I have quite a collaborative process with my clients. So I feel like because they're very much on the journey with me, at all those early stages, once they see a sketch and they have an idea where it's going, they're happy to let me just like finish the thing, and they're usually delighted with the thing. Occasionally there'll be a round of feedback, but usually they have an idea of what they're going to get at that stage.
What is your biggest failure and what role did it what role did it play in making you who you are?
Oh, okay. So my biggest failure was definitely my first year of college. So as I said before, I had a little bit of uncertainty about which path I was going to go down. So how would I describe this? It's so awkward talking about these things. I don't know if they're even relevant to like kids coming out of school now, if they're all different. But essentially, I didn't do a portfolio before I finished Leaving Cert. So I did a portfolio course after the Leaving Cert. So it was like a 1 year course where you're just supposed to like get all your bits together and apply for the NCT portfolio and the GAT and IADT, etc., etc. So the whole year essentially was preparing for that. However, I definitely struggled with that. So essentially, I had been in a lot of ways quite lucky where I was like I suppose relatively smart or good at essentially absorbing lots of information in class and then regurgitating it in an exam like 6 weeks later, and like I managed to scrape by like pretty easily throughout school with that method. However, I had absolutely zero ability to apply myself to a project over a long period of time. So essentially, my usual methods of procrastinating, which had worked perfectly in secondary school, did not apply to the real world or third level education. So I basically procrastinated loads and loads and loads and loads and loads. And I think a lot of that was definitely like a fear of failure, because I felt like there was so much pressure on this one portfolio. Like this one portfolio will decide where you are for the next 4 years and decide what college you go to, what courses you can apply to, blah, 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 blah. So procrastinated loads and did not do great as a result. I think I only started like I think I actually like started doing like the meat of my portfolio like 4 weeks before before the actual hand-in date, which is absolutely insane considering I had essentially it would have been a whole year, because I think the portfolio thing was in February, so I would have had like a few months at the very least to do this. But I procrastinated so bad, really, really struggled with applying myself, and was literally like sticking things in my notebook at like 4 a.m. the day before the NCAD hand-in, and like naturally I didn't get into NCAD, but would have been fine. But I also didn't get into DIT, which was my second choice, because I did actually get into IADT, which is a spectacular college, but I lived in Blanchardstown at the time, like the back end of Blanchardstown, so like far, far out, and it would have taken me literally 3 hours to get into South Dublin every morning. And I had already proven that I did not have a good attendance. So I was like, I just won't go to college. Like if I go to this IADT course, I just won't go to college. Like I just won't go. So I was like, I have to do this again. So I essentially had to do another course. But because I was talking about the Susie grant and how I basically had to keep progressing, I had like a really, really big fear where I was like, I am kind of stuck now, because I need to keep progressing through the system. So the Ballyfermot course was, the portfolio course was level 6. So I found a level 7 course in Ballyfermot, which was a graphic design course. So that was a 2 year course. And I so I did that for 2 years, and like the difference in who I was the first portfolio course in comparison to the second was like literally night and day. Like that failure really it really shook me up. I was like, you can't just keep like hoping that things will turn out okay, because they're not going to. Like like this is the real world now, you're an adult, like you need to learn to apply yourself, because like there's no safety net, there's no backup. Like you need to make sure that you do this and do it well. So I think remarkably failing that early in my career helped me really, really like figure out that I needed to really, really go for something if I wanted to make it happen. But yeah, it was definitely my biggest failure. But I'm happy that it did happen, because I did get into DIT then, and I was, of course I was in, and I managed to like skip a great because I kind of like covered some of the subjects in the portfolio course. So it worked out quite well in the end. But it was definitely I'd say that was my biggest failure. But I'm happy at my biggest failure very early on in my creative career.
Well, with that learning from your failure, did you then start incorporating or being more willing to fail uh, moving forward? You know,
Oh yeah, yeah, 100%. I just like accepted that like failure is essentially part of life. It's a part of life. It's a part of creativity. If you're not failing, then you're actually probably not pushing yourself hard enough. So I feel like failing that early made me realize that it wasn't the end of the world. I didn't get where I wanted to be, and I really had to like look at myself and change my practices. But I learned so much from it, and because of that, I was able to apply that then in my career later on, and I was a lot less afraid of failing then.
that was gold.
Was it gold? Okay, fantastic. Interview Grace Enemaku, fear of failure. Her biggest failure yet.
Um, so do you have a message you want to get across with your work? You know, like for a lot of creatives, we like to hone into a message. I think that's part of the artist within us is like, you know, we tend to curate that, and that becomes like our why. And then that starts curating the sort of clients we work with as well. Did you have that in your process? Um, is that something you think about?
Yes. So I would say it's really, really hard because I think that I have like kind of a few messages in my work. But I would say that the main message you see in my work is that I just like to make crazy thing. Okay, I'm gonna start that again because I'm just saying absolute insanity now. Give me a second. This is the question I struggled with the most because I feel like I have two
Okay.
like kind of things.
No,
but-
just tell
say
the
that.
two messages
Okay.
then. Yeah,
Okay, perfect.
that's okay.
Okay, grand. So I'd say I probably have a couple of messages in my work. One is that I just like to explore, the idea that there's so much weirdness and beauty in this world. And I think a lot of my work is quite surreal, but also quite fun, and pop and kitschy. And I really like to kind of like lean into the strange beauty we have all around us. But also, I think the second message probably relates to a little bit about diversity. So I do really like to keep as many different diverse characters in all different manners, whether it's race, ethnicity, body type, etc. Because I just feel like the world doesn't do enough. I feel like the world doesn't do enough. And when I was growing up, I definitely did not feel represented by a lot of the media. In Ireland at all. And it obviously is a lot better now. There's still a long way to go. But I would love to be creating that work that my younger child self never got to see. And hopefully, the progress we've made now will be felt in our children's lifetime. So they won't have to go through the struggles that we went, is my hope.
Speaking of, diversity and, the importance of it and the fact that you didn't feel represented, were there any barriers you faced as a creative, of color within the industry? And how did you go about dealing with that?
Yeah, so I always like stress about answering this question because like it's not a nice answer essentially, and like no one wants to hear it. But I have definitely had to deal with racism in the industry, and like I feel like a lot of it wasn't necessarily malicious, but it was definitely very ignorant, like people using words that they definitely should not be saying. But then, you experience that racism in the industry, and like I'm then forced essentially to call that out and say, please do not say that because that is inappropriate, and it's making me incredibly uncomfortable and it's wrong. But if I don't do that, I will not be able to like live with myself. But I'm also aware that in doing that, I'm putting my career at risk because, nobody wants to be uncomfortable. Nobody wants to be the person to be called like, oh, you said a racist thing. No one wants to hear that, but like because other people aren't doing that as the only person of color in the room, it's then my job to do it, and it's very, very frustrating. So I'd say that's probably been a barrier to my work for sure.
So what sort of then have you done within the larger industry to kind of address this issue?
Yeah, so I co-founded with the other two co-founders, Mick Chikanda and Greg Osborne. We co-founded an initiative called Design Up, which is essentially a platform initiative partnered with the IDI. And our goal is to champion diversity for people of colour in the Irish design and creative industry. So our hope is to really, really, make those changes in the industry now. So the kids coming out of secondary school, out of college, going into the industry, they will have a lot less barriers to entry. So we have three main pillars. So our three pillars are education, opportunity, and community. So we want to really, decolonize third level education in design, and we want to create more opportunities for people of colour, as well as just create like a vibrant, fun, welcoming community for creators of colour in Ireland. I'll say the full question so I can.
So tell me a little bit about, is it important to have a personal brand as a creative? What's the importance or the impact of social media?
I would say yes. I would say it is definitely very beneficial to have a personal brand as a creative. I think both personally, it helps you kind of like nail down, establish the type of work you want to do and get better at that over and over again. And I also think that it helps prospective clients find you, first of all, and secondly, know what type of work to come to you for. And I think that's having a strong social media presence gives you a lot of freedom. It helps clients reach out to you more, and it gives you a lot more freedom to choose the type of work you want to do. So you're not just relying on having an agency or a company provide you with work. You can go and access work a lot easier, and people get excited about your work as well.
Share your story.
Share your story, yeah.
So what is your hope for the future?
My hope for the future is to kind of expand into new areas of creativity and design illustration. I always like to be trying new things and create new types of work that I've never done before. I have my first children's book coming out in September. Oh my god, September now. Coming out the 29th of September, which I'm really excited about, and I'm hoping that I'll be able to do a lot more of them in the future. It's been a really, really fun avenue to go around and sort of designing for the little Grace that didn't necessarily get stories about little black girls. So I'd love to do more of that in the future.
All right. So what does the word fruitful mean to you? To live a fruitful life or to be fruitful?
So the word fruitful to me means like bountiful. It's sort of like gathering your harvest, all the seeds of your hard work that you planted, and sort of bring back that home in the basket. I don't know why I'm saying weird stuff now.
Just look this way.
Oh, look more this way.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say the fruits of your hard work after. Okay. So fruitful to me, I guess it's just like bountiful. It's just receiving the fruits of your hard work at the end of the day.
And if there was one piece of advice you'd give yourself when you first started, what would it be?
Oh, one piece of advice I would give myself.
Or to any young creative right now.
Do you know what? Piece of advice I would give to a young creative is actually to just do it. Like Nike had it right from the get-go. Just do it, because I know that there's so many young creatives who have so many great like ideas, and like they're so excited about being creative, but like they haven't taken that first leap, and there's sort of like a hesitancy and this idea that the first thing you come out with has to be amazing and has to be your magnum opus, and like it absolutely does not. Like just make creative work, do creative things, and try not to get into your head too much. And I'm actually gonna I won't quote this, but I will say to look up the video The Gap by Ira Glass. So essentially Ira talks about, when you're any creative, when you're starting out, you kind of get into creative industry because you have great taste, you have an eye for aesthetics, and you have great ideas. But then when you start making things, they're kind of terrible. And like, because you have that eye and like that taste, you're aware that the stuff you're making isn't great, and there's a gap between what you want to make and what you're actually capable of making. And a lot of people give up at that stage, or they think, oh, I'm not good at this, or this isn't something that I can do. But they don't realize that every creative starts out this way. Like literally, like if you saw my drawings from from even when like I started out in college, like they're just wild, and that's totally normal. And I think that really you have to overcome that step, and the only way to overcome it is just keep on making things and making things and making things and making things, and slowly, eventually, you'll close the gap and you will be where you want to be. But you have to take that leap first, and just do it.
Thank you all for listening through today's episode of the Fruitful Life podcast. I hope you walk away with some nuggets of wisdom from the stories shared by our creators. If you did, please do consider leaving us a review and subscribing to our podcast. Be true, be you, stay fruitful.